Sandy Close, Director of Ethnic Media Services. April 1st has long been designated as Census Day, the day America takes a portrait of who we are, a selfie of all Americans. We're honored to have the state's leading expert on all things census as our keynote speaker today. Ditas Katague, Director of California Complete Count 2020 Census Office. Ms. Katague will give an update on the response rate across the state, where the biggest challenges are in reaching certain populations, how her office is adapting to the coronavirus pandemic, and her views on why the census matters. I can think of no one I'd rather have on today's call. Ditas is a census champion for California and has been since before the 2000 census. She turned me into a convert that year. She has visited every corner of the state and talked with every hard-to-count population, and will do that up through the final day for filling out census forms, which, as she will tell you, is now extended to August 15th. Joining Ditas Katague are two leaders of veteran advocacy organizations who are also on the front lines of promoting the census. Jun Lim of Asian Americans Advancing Justice and Batem El-Kara of the Sacramento Office of CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. They will each give us an update on how they see the populations they work with responding to the census and the strategies their organizations are undertaking to address those challenges. Thank you both so much for joining us. Following their presentations, we will open the call to our media attendees. Our call center host will again instruct you on how to queue for questions and remind you to mute your phone after you ask your question. We're ready now to begin. I turn the conference line over to Ditas Katague.
Andy, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I want to welcome everyone here today, and thank you for joining this super important call. This is Ditas Katague, and I am the director of the California Complete Count Census 2020 office. As Sandy mentioned, this is my third decennial, and so I'm a little bit committed, I guess you could say, and very passionate about what the census means for our communities. Well, April 1st, that's today. It is a historic day. It is National Census Day. But I want to make sure I just clarify, as Sandy said, the decennial census is really a snapshot in time about what our nation looks like, what our communities look like. And so that's why it's so important, because, you know, history is watching, and you want to be a part of history. You don't want to be invisible. So today, even though it's April 1st and Census Day, it's not like that's the deadline, the drop-dead deadline. It's not like it would be, one day, when Election Day. Census actually started really March 12th when basically households throughout the nation started to receive their invitations to respond. And it will continue through the summer. But today marks the day, April 1st, where you want to be able to, you have to pick a day and time of where are you, where were you, who was in your household. So I want to make sure that people know that, yes, we'd love you to respond today, but you do have some time in the coming weeks to respond. In fact, if you don't have a chance to respond this week, you will probably likely get an actual paper form. And we'll go into it a little bit later about all the different ways that you can respond. We're trying to make it, the U.S. Census Bureau is trying to make it easy. And in light of what we're facing externally in our, across the nation, there are methods for us to be able to answer. So as Sandy mentioned, every decade since 1790, the U.S. Census Bureau has done a decennial survey. And it's so important because it's really important because it's about power, it's about money, and it's about data. So I've added that last kind of point because as we become more and more aware of how data is being used. I think every day we see lots of data and statistics being talked about. It's important for us to understand how the census fits in with that. The power portion is really about having representation, having a voice, and being able to be heard. Especially now, these days, we want to make sure that Washington knows that we're here and that our communities count, and that we're going to be standing up for what we deserve and what we want to be represented and how we want to be represented, and we want to make sure that those dollars, and that's the money piece, comes back to our community. So it's about power, it's about money, it's about the dollars that every April during tax season you send dollars to the federal U.S. Treasury every single year. And only once a decade do you have the opportunity to demand that it comes back to your community, and that's by being counted. That's by making sure that everyone in your community fills out a census form. As I mentioned, the census really started around March 12th, where they opened up the Internet self-response tool, and invitations went around throughout the country. Right now, on Census Day, California, their households, 37.9% of California households have already responded to the census. And our superstar counties that are ahead of the state average are Santa Clara, San Mateo, Contra Costa, Orange, and Ventura. It's important to note that the national average of households responding is 38.4%. So we're slightly behind. And those Californians that have self-responded can be rest assured and acknowledge that they will be counted, and they've done their part to bring that funding and representation back to California. For those who have not yet responded, you can respond either online or by phone, and I encourage everyone to visit my2020census.gov to fill out your form today, or you can respond by phone, 330-2020, opportunity to select where they can call you back. So I just want to talk about how our office, and you're going to be hearing from a couple of our partners as soon as I finish, they've been focused on ensuring that California's over 11 million hardest to count population have the information and support they need to participate. As most of you know, California, we're expected to come in over 40 million. And so having 11 million people hard to count is a huge lift. And for perspective, 11 million is slightly larger than the state of Georgia. So if you think about how big and diverse California is, this effort really is taking the talent of our partners and the creativity to make sure that everyone is educated and activated. I want to make sure I clarify that our role here at the California Complete Count Office is different than the U.S. Census Bureau's. The U.S. Census Bureau is the federal agency, as you all know, that is responsible for the actual enumeration, canvassing, conducting for the enumeration process. They do the counting, and the California and our local partners, we're doing the outreach to make sure we educate everyone. So the state knew, and Sandy alluded to back in 1999, it was the first time that any state had ever invested in doing outreach to their residents. And I helped lead those efforts in 1999, and we ended up outpacing the entire country. And what we used back then was similar to how we structured this time around, although we've got a lot more cool technology and different ways. We depended on our trusted messengers. We put questionnaire assistance centers in the places that could be accessible to our hardest to count population. And we did micro-targeted multilingual media and really leaned hard on our ethnic media partners to really help get out the word. So for the 2000 census, the state had allocated $24.7 million to support a complete count, yet I came aboard in December of 1999, leaving us about 18 weeks prior to when the census really got into full swing to implement that groundbreaking program. For the 2010 census, as most of you may remember, 2008, we had the global financial meltdown. The state provided just $2 million, and we had 1/10 of that, which brings us to 2020. So we started a lot earlier. So in 2010, I started in 2008, about 18 months rather than 18 weeks. And this time around, we started work back in 2017. But we have some very unique challenges, as you're very aware of, which include or not limited to just the sheer diversity of our population, to which you all are committed to serving. The population and geographic size of our state, as I mentioned, just LA County alone, the population there is larger than 42 other states. And I think if you're not a Californian, you don't really understand that until you put it into perspective of how the other states, measure up to the amount of population we have here. And again, the U.S. Census Bureau, this is their first time doing a truly digital census. Typically, they do it by mail. You get a mail form, you receive it in the mail, and you mail it back. This time around, they have an internet self-response tool, which I mentioned on that census, my 2020 census.gov. You can reply back, and you can also be enumerated on the phone, which they did not have that. And then finally, they do have the mail option of a paper form. But as in the past, there have been distrust of government institutions, but I think even more so this time around, the fear and distrust of government institutions is a lot greater. I will say that there is no citizenship question on this form, and so I think we should be allowing our partners to understand that, allowing the hardest to count populations to say there is no citizenship question because there is confusion out there. But to respond to those challenges that you've heard, the state is working through over 120 partners, which includes local governments, tribal governments, our K-12 schools, county offices of education, community-based organizations, state agencies and departments, faith-based organizations, labor unions, small business, and media and others. It is really, we are coordinating the largest mobilization of partners in the state's history. And I just have to do a shout-out. Our partners are amazing. They're really getting the work done, even in the fact that we've had to pivot from in-person outreach, and you'll hear again from some of our. We help elevate and substantiate what the census is, explain why it's so important, and ultimately motivate all Californians